Okay, this next section we have Mr. Charles Denton presenting on the AIS class.
Hi, my name is Chuck Denton. I'm from a little company up in Maine called Technology Systems. We've been involved in navigation systems, mostly with the U.S. military, although we're starting to do a lot of commercial stuff also. I'm going to talk about something that we have labeled AIS Class E. I'll have a slide just on the name. But the idea behind it is supporting recreational voters, which of course don't use traditional AIS. So outline a discussion about why we need new AIS protocol, system we developed as a reference implementation, and then I'll go into the weeds a little bit, but hopefully not too deep on the technical side of things, and then where we stand as far as next steps go. Why we need a new AIS protocol? Generally speaking, everybody likes AIS concept. It's nice to know that other people can see where you are and that you can see where other people are. Traditional AIS was developed, of course, back in the 70s. The MIMSI number scheme, which is the identification numbers that you get, works great when it was designed for use with telex exchanges initially. And there's less than 1 million numbers available for the U.S., but there's over 17 million recreational voters out there, so you have a problem with it. You just can't sign everybody up. Also, this was designed as a collision avoidance system, and really for high-speed vessels. The bandwidth on the VHF time domain stuff out there is approaching saturation. If you were to add all the recreational voters out there, especially in the busy harbor, you'd just bring the system to its knees. So AIS A and B is great, but fast forward 20 years from now, if you're going to have everybody broadcasting vessel position information, there's going to be a different solution, and that's what we're looking at. Department of Homeland Security put out a request for proposals a few years back. They actually had 51 responses, and we were lucky enough to be the one that got down selected. But basically, they were looking at how can we improve tracking of small vessels for a bunch of different reasons. And we looked at it and said, you know, by the time you have a recreational boat, you already have a smartphone. And look at what AIS has. It has a GPS for position sensing, communications capability to share that information. If you look at a smartphone, it has a GPS, it has a communications capability. So we developed as a prototype a product called SmartChart AIS, which is a smartphone-based app. We're providing a bunch of stuff for free, NOAA charts and other things. In exchange, users are expected to broadcast their location, and they get to see other vessel locations also. It's a prototype for what we've called AIS Class E. A little discussion about the SmartChart AIS product. Voters, they want to know where they are, they want to know what's around them. We're able to show them that by providing them with electronic charts, AIS surrogate over cellular. We also feed them any AIS Class A and B information that we have. We provide augmented reality capability, so now in addition to just the 2D chart, they can look through the camera and see information, and some social networking capabilities. It runs on smartphones and tablets, the basic implementation. Also, since Homeland Security has paid for the implementation of it, we're giving it away for free. The Android's been released, and iPhone is in beta, and its release is right around the corner. Our charts are provided from NOAA's direct TNC servers. They are an online product, so you have to be hooked up to the internet to be able to get them. They also are ArcGIS based. ArcGIS is probably the most common GIS system out there, which also means that you can plug into a whole bunch of other content, things such as NEXRAD radar, and we even use system oil spill response and other applications of that nature. AIS Class E, we're calling it developmental. It is not to be equated with anything having to do with AIS A and B. It is tailored specifically for recreational voters. I'll go into a little more detail on it in future slides, but one of the key things is that it provides both user and vessel identification. I personally have both a sailboat and a powerboat, but I can go down with my smartphone, fire up a system and then choose which boat I'm going to be on. So it knows who I am as a user, but it also knows which vessel I'm on. Likewise, multiple people might be on the same vessel, all using their smartphones, with all of them logged in on that vessel. Not providing full reports out to everybody else, but the concept of multiple users and multiple systems on a single vessel is cool. We're currently sourcing Class A and B traffic from AIS Hub.net. We can pretty much take feed from anywhere, but that gives us some relatively good coverage. In the graphics here, the left-hand graphic, the green arrows are AIS Class E tracks, and they have current information. If it's yellow, that's marginal. If it's red, it's either aged or definitely a low resolution GPS reading. The purple blips, those are the AIS Class A and B targets that we picked up. We also provide Active Captain data. Active Captain is it's a free cruising guide that's internet-based. It gives you pilot information, plus information about marinas and the like. And all of that is overlaid onto your charts and available through augmented reality. The augmented reality views, essentially we take the information that we have on the chart that's all in vector format, and we project that into the camera image. So you can see right here there's a buoy, and next to that we have this virtual counterpart. What's handy about it is once it gets foggy out, you can still see where the buoys are, or at least get some guidance as to what direction you should be looking at. Likewise, if there's a ferry coming at you that's broadcasting AIS, you'll be able to see where it is, or pick it out of several different boats that are out there. It's great for low visibility type situations, and you can also tap on the screen and it'll give you additional information about that. And we show navigation aids, we show AIS Class A, B, E, and all the active captain data. And then we have social networking capability. You can see who's around you. You can have a friends list. You can chat with them. You can share images with them. You can do share information, such as misinformation, by telling everybody where the good fishing is when you know it's actually somewhere else. You can drop your boat, go in, have dinner, come back after it's dark and foggy, and find it because you dropped the pin where it was. This gets into the technical side of it. Everything on the top is basically the traditional AIS environment where you have AIS Class A and B users and their systems. They're broadcasting on VHF. They may be interacting with land-based systems. And then from there, that goes out through internet-based interfaces into the cloud. The next couple layers down are cloud-based stuff, some of it being things that we've produced under our work, and others being things that are just out there that we can get access to through the cloud. And then down on the bottom, we have the actual users. As I mentioned, it's available for free now, leaving a stack of brochures down here. We have 12,000 downloads for Android at the moment, and we've also discovered that iPhone has about 80% of the recreational boating market. So once the iPhone goes out, we'll figure that we're probably going to hit 100,000 by the end of summer. AIS Class E, what's in the name? I think that the real key thing is that when you say AIS, everybody knows what we're talking about. We're talking about an automatic identification system. Class E is a controversial thing. I just had a meeting with Joe Ryan talking about that. On the one hand, we're dealing with the recreational market, which is totally unregulated. On the other hand, the high seas folks, AIS has a whole bunch of implications that are broad. FCC looks at it, and there may be legal reasons why I shouldn't be calling it AIS Class E. I think the most positive way that I look at it is that I've sort of poked the hornet's nest and woken everybody up to the fact that 15, 20 years from now, everybody's going to be tracking through the cloud in one way or another. And there's got to be some sort of AIS type standard to support not only the high seas folks, but all those other little targets that are out there. We don't proclaim that it is anything like AIS A and B, except that it is represented, it's a surrogate for it, that's what I could say. And we're probably going to be having more discussions with Joe and other people, and we may be renaming it, but for the moment, we're calling it AIS Class A. The overall long-term objective is we want to have this transition into being a standard that anybody can sign up to, anybody can get information out of it. It's got to be platform and operating system agnostic. It's got to be open. It's got to be reliable and predictable, and it's got to be enforceable. It can't just be sort of an ad hoc thing. It's got to have something. You got to be able to trust it. We've looked at a couple other standards that are out there, just sort of as a template for how should we approach this. One of them is domain name services. You know, when you type in a web address, it goes off to the DNS server and translates all of that into the actual IP addresses. So, World Wide Web, DNS, it's not only a standard, it's a service. And there's a nonprofit that was stood up called ICANN that provides that service, and then if you want to have systems that are compatible with that, you have to develop software following certain standards. AIS Class A and B, that's another standard. It doesn't require an operational service while it's actually operating because you're going peer-to-peer, vessel to vessel. But on the other hand, the distribution of MIMSI numbers, that is a service that is managed internationally with pre-reserved numbers for various geographical regions and the like. And then lastly, there's NMEA has their integrated bridge messages, which aren't vessel-to-vessel type messages, they're more system-to-system on an integrated bridge. All of these have elements that can help us in defining how we want to find this new developmental standard. It's built using a client-server model. The way we currently have it, and we're just starting to push this out for use by other software developers for their electronic track systems. But there's three basic functions: the registration management, which is the equivalent of getting your MIMSI number, getting your IDs to the system. There's client management, which is when you turn on a system, how you actually register it in the system so it knows how to deal with the server. And then there's the real-time services. Couple definition: users, that's an individual person with an account and a cell phone, or maybe even multiple cell phones. Vessels, that's the boat, the vessel itself. And then systems, that's the hardware, whether it be a smartphone or a laptop PC, or even ultimately what we see as being a chart caller that's out there. So from a registration, web portal registration perspective, users sign into that. They come up with it. They have to give a unique username and some information about themselves. Once they're a user, they're allowed to create vessels that they themselves own. And they're granted permission to associate those vessels with systems that they can log into. They also can share a vessel they own with other users. So, and I'll have another example of this coming up. And you can add vessel information also. Client management, this is how people, when a system fires up, it's akin to when you register your AIS Class A or B by putting in a MIMSI number and other information. This, when you fire up a system, how are you going to let it know what vessels it's representing? And essentially, it goes to you put in your user ID. You then get what vessels are allowed for that user, select which vessel it is, press go, and you're good to go. On the cell phone, you actually should do that every time you log in. And then real-time services are pretty much turnkey. You start broadcasting your position, and it starts returning to you position information. So this is it in the graphic. So you create yourself as a user, then you can create a vessel. Create multiple vessels if you have them. Another user can come along, create their vessel, and also have a vessel shared to it. So now they have access to another vessel. A third user can come along, and this could be somebody who just charters boats, doesn't own any boats. When he charters one, the owner of that boat shares that over to him, and then he can also log into that vessel. So now you've been to West Marine and you bought a chart system, and you turn it on, and the system says, well, what do I do now? You tell it who you are as a user. The user then, the database comes back and says, these are the authorized vessels for that user. You select which vessel you're going to be. You do that for another system, tell it the user, get the list, and here, now you've associated it to another vessel. This third system goes over to this user, only one vessel available. Now we've got two systems all logged into one vessel. So from an end user perspective, you establish yourself as a user, you establish or access vessels, you log in, and then once you do that, you're good to go. From the developer's perspective, you have to contact us and we have an agreement, and basically we give you a credential and API key that allows you to log into the server. Then you have to create a series of capabilities. We have all of this documented, and I can share that with anybody who has interest. So next steps on this. This really, the reason for speaking today is that up until now, this has been what one might call a science fair project where we've been developing the capability and implementing it as really an R&D. And now we're taking the results of this, putting it out in the industry, offering it to other manufacturers to integrate into their capability. But also we want to put this out in the public domain, the AISE element of it, as nominated as a public standard. Probably start off with NNEA as the folks to peer review and start drafting as what ultimately may become an international standard. Probably won't be called AIS Class C, but the bottom line is that it's in everybody's interest that 5 years from now, we don't have 5 competing ad hoc variants of this, but that we have a agreed-to architecture that's open, that everybody can use, and that takes the unregulated recreational boating community and the highly regulated high seas community and all the law enforcement folks in the middle and has them all playing nice together. So, in summary, AIS is good for everybody. The A&B standard approach isn't going to work for the recreational community. We've developed a concept and an approach that has been proven feasible, and we're now looking to bring this into the public domain. I also forgot to mention that there is somebody who patented this concept before I went off and wrote a proposal on it. But they are in complete agreement that this approach is correct, and they're basically looking at offering that patent into a nonprofit for use to promote this to the best of industry. And that's it.